Hi, everybody. Thank you for stopping by. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to adjust a carburetor. Whether you've just rebuilt it or you just got a tractor and you're trying to get it going for it, trying to get the engine running, but you're fighting carburation, or you just have taken the carburetor apart and just cleaned it up, and now you just need to find the factory settings to get this thing running properly. This will be the same. I'm going to be talking about the old style, like Briggs and Stratton cast iron engines. The old tractor style, garden tractor style engines. You'll find them in rototillers, that type of stuff. Maybe log splitters. Most of the old engines will have this type of carburetor, especially the Briggs and Stratton. So anything with this style of carburetor, or one of these Kippa carburetors, the newer Japanese or Chinese carburetors to replace these Marvell Schebler from the like the N series tractors, like the 2N and the 9N and the 8N and Massey Ferguson's, things like that. John Deere's, they all have carburetors similar to this. And when I say similar to this, they will all have what's called an idle adjustment screw and what I call a high idle, but it's really a high RPM work range adjustment screw right there. Usually, most of them will be down here somewhere. So I always refer to the idle one, the idle adjustment screw, as the typically it's the highest one up on the carburetor. So if we were to look at let's say this one off the Briggs, like most of them will have the idle adjustment screw right there, and then the high RPM, the one for the workload adjustment, where you'll be running like 3,300 RPM. The main jet, that's that screw. So you got one up here and one down here. And again, like on those other ones, there's some of them that are here, but the smallest screw is going to be the idle adjustment screw. So let's say you've taken your carburetor off, you've taken it all apart, and you've cleaned it all up. You put it back together, and now you don't know how to set where these screw settings are supposed to be. So what I like to do is, on this one here, the factory setting is going to be, let's say you set that all the way out or all the way in. The factory setting is going to be one full turn all the way out as the initial setting on this one, which is your idle adjustment screw. And then the initial factory setting on your workload or your high RPM, that's going to be 1 1/4 turns out. So you're going to screw that all the way in until the needle seats. And the needle is basically looks like this on the inside. Just like that right there. Yeah. And then this is the little housing that it rests in. Okay. So on this carburetor, that's going to be that guy. That's going to be that guy. Apologize. Once again, I'm new at the YouTube stuff. So I just have to remember to put this stuff in the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing. It's hard to hold it up and talk and see what I'm doing all at the same time. But I'll get it. I think this is my third video. Maybe after 20 videos, I'll get it figured out, and I'll have a new camera by then rather than using my phone. Right now, I'm just fighting the sound. I got the sound, and I've got a little thing adapted to my phone and all that sort of stuff, and using my editing software. So it's a lot of stuff to get used to. So I'm not used to talking when I'm working on when I'm doing my work. So I might fumble around a little bit, but again, that's because I'm typically not talking when I'm working. I'm just working and I'm focused. I'm just focused on that. So I'll do my best here. So the first thing I want to tell you is, as these engines, or the engine gets old and the carburetor gets old, parts wear out. And when these were engineered, the factory engineers, said, well, they were designed for a certain setting. So you'll back these out a certain way to get it at factory setting, which this one is 1 full turn, and this one is 1 1/4. But even when you start your engine, and that's exactly the factory setting, on a used engine and a used carburetor, it's not going to work. I mean, it's just not going to work perfect. So, but it will work to get the engine started. But what happens is, these are designed with just the perfect amount of vacuum. As the piston is going down in the cylinder, it's sucking fuel and air in, but once those rings wear out, you don't get that same vacuum nor the same compression. So things just aren't the same. So when you don't have the same compression, the same fuel air mixture isn't going to be required. It's going to be different to get it just right. And again, on this, This is your throttle, and I'll show you on this one because this one has, so you've got your throttle control, and it has a rod that goes all the way through here that the butterfly valve attaches to, okay, which is this guy right here. So that's a new throttle control rod. And what happens is in here, inside there, it rotates on, I'll just set this little bushing right here. Hopefully you can see it. It sets on, well, maybe just do it right here. Kind of hard to figure out where these cameras point to. So that's just a little bushing that goes inside of that spot right there. And there's another one that goes on this spot in there, and then it has a little like a Welch plug in it. So what you have the option to do is when you rebuild the carburetor, so you can replace those bushings. So what happens if you've got an old rod in old bushings, those bushings wear out. And that vacuum is coming through the venturi here. But if you've got worn out bushings, you're going to get vacuum coming in through those bushings as well. It's going to bypass the rod, bypass the bushing. And so so it's the equivalent of having a vacuum leak on a car. So you've got to fight that if you're working with an old carburetor. So I say that, so I want you to know you really can't expect a perfect setting when you have a used engine and a used carburetor, because there's wear on them, and it has more vacuum or less vacuum pulling in the fuel. So your setting is going to be just a little bit different. So that's why I say you're going to start with factory settings, and then you'll work it from there. So whether you've just brought this tractor home and you want to get it running, and you've cleaned everything up, and you're just hoping to get this thing started without rebuilding carburetor, or let's say you've taken the carburetor off and you've cleaned it up, put it back together, and now you're just you're doing your initial start on your engine, and you want those initial settings, and then you want to know how to adjust it from there. So once again, before you start the engine, go ahead and turn your idle screw in all the way, and then back it out. I always go by half, so I turn it one half and then another one half. So that gives you your full turn. So do that one full turn. So you do, two half turns, either whatever's going to work for you, but you're going to make it one full turn. And then on this one here, again, it's going to be 1 1/4 turn. So you screw it all the way in, and then I go half, 1/2, and then 1/4. So I do it by halves, because for me, it's just much easier, and I'll show you why. I'll try to do this without shaking too much. So let's say this is all the way in. So it's just easier for me to turn that screwdriver 1/2 turn rather than trying to make that screwdriver go all the way around in my hand. So I do 1/2 and then 1/2, and then I go 1/4. So that's the factory setting on most of them. Now some will be like up to 2 turns, but you're going to find that on most of these older Briggs and Stratton, Kohlers, Wisconsins, things like that, Tecumsehs. You're not going to need the 2 full turns. So then what I do is, this is on the engine. I've turned that all the way in, and then I backed it out 1 1/4. I've turned this one all the way in, backed it out 1 full turn, and now I'm ready to start the engine. So then what I'll do is on this one, the choke is down here. So what I'll do to start it is I'm going to start it. I'm going to choke it. So I pull the choke, and then I start this engine, and then as the engine starts, hopefully it's going to start there. Once it starts, then you want to just slowly, and it's going to run a little rough. It's going to run a little rough. And initially, you might hear that. You probably heard it where the engine goes. Wah, wah, wah. That's called hunting. And what it's hunting for is the proper setting. The proper setting you haven't given it yet. And the proper setting for the air fuel mixture. So that's why it's doing that. It's going up, and then it's going, that's not it, and it goes back down, and so it just keeps hunting for the correct setting. So then what you do is, once you get that thing started, it's not going to run right. It's just going to run pretty crummy, and then you want to push that choke in until the thing starts to die. And once it starts to die, pull that choke back out just a little bit until you can keep that engine running. Just that choke, however it's running, just make sure you can keep it running. However you have it choked. And then once that happens, then the first thing you want to do is adjust this one. So you've got your throttle all the way down in the idle position. You've got it choked just enough for the engine to stay running. This guy's backed out 1 1/4 turn. This one's backed out 1 full turn. Now you can take this one here, and on these you have to come in from the side, which is not easy. I just use one of my smallest screwdrivers to do that. And so what you're going to do is you're going to turn that screw in just maybe a 16th of a turn, maybe not even that much, but you're going to hear right away a change in the speed of the engine. And you want to go in just a little bit, maybe a 16th or an eighth of a turn, find out what the engine's going to do on you. If it starts to slow down, if the RPMs get lower, and what you want to do is then back up again, back that screw out just a little bit, and then back to that factory setting, initial factory setting, and then back it out from there, like a 16th to an eighth of a turn. You want to find out which direction is going to give you a higher idle, a higher RPM. And then you back that out until you get that maximum RPM before it starts lowering the RPM. So you want to find that sweet spot. You turn it in and the RPM goes up and then it starts going down. We'll back it out until you find that high RPM. And once you get that high RPM there, then you want to get over to this one, put your throttle halfway up, maybe 3/4 of the way to the work range, and do the same thing with this one. Screw it in like an eighth of a turn or a 16th of a turn. If the RPM goes up, then just keep screwing it in until the RPM doesn't go up anymore. But if you start screwing that thing in and the RPM goes down, then immediately back it out and then back out from the factory setting a 16th to an eighth of a turn until you find the maximum RPM. Then from there, a lot of times what I'm doing is when I'm screwing that in, I might have to let the choke in just a little bit too. So once you get that going and it stays running, then you want to come back to this one and try to push the choke in just a little bit and until the RPMs die down, until you're having a hard time keeping it running, and maybe you have to pull the choke back out a little bit. You want to keep it running, and then you go back to this screw again. Okay, and this is a process. There isn't one setting where you're going to set it, start your engine, and everything's going to work great. And there isn't one setting where you're going to start the engine, maybe adjust it one time, and everything's going to work great. It just doesn't work that way. So you want to, again, screw this one in or screw it back out, because this one, the adjustment you made on this one is now going to, the adjustment you made on that one is now going to change the adjustment on this. So then you back this one out or in a little bit till you find that higher RPM until it starts to lower. Once it lowers a little bit, then back it out again until you find that highest RPM. Then go back to this one. You might push the choke in a little bit and then back this one out or in, whichever way is going to give you that higher RPM. And you just keep going back and forth. And each time, keep pushing that choke in just a little bit more. And you might have to go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times of adjusting this one a little more, back to this one just a little more, adjust this one a little more, and then this one a little more. Each time pushing that choke in, just pushing it in, just pushing that limit until you hear that RPM starting to go down, and then maybe the engine doesn't want to run anymore. Pull that choke back out just a little bit. But so what you're doing is each time you adjust these, you're going to be able to push that choke in just a little bit more. And each time that engine's still going to go. And so when you adjust these, you're going to hear some of that slow down. So you're going to either hear the RPM go up or you're going to hear that hunting settle down a little bit and then push that choke in. And so you just keep going back and forth and back and forth. And, if you're new at doing that, you're going to get to the point eventually where you're going to hear those sweet spots. You're going to hear what's happening with those adjustments, and you eventually get it right. But again, as you're adjusting this, and you're adjusting your choke. You're going back and forth, and each time. So, and to remember that this one is adjusted at the throttle at idle speed. Then when you go back to this one, you want to turn your throttle back up to 3/4 to almost full speed, whatever is going to work for you. Eventually, you'll want to be at full throttle when you get your final adjustment on that, because at full throttle is where you're supposed to be at work range. So if you're mowing, that has to be at full. It has to be at full throttle. Otherwise, you don't get maximum cooling air, and you won't get maximum oil splash lubricating the inside of your engine. So that's really it when it comes to factory settings on these. And the same thing, it goes for these older style Briggs. That adjustment screw is just right there. In factory, I just start with factory, I turn that all the way in. It goes all the way in, and then I start 1/2, 1. And then the choke is here. I'll pull that choke. I'll try to start it. It might spit and sputter, and then I push that choke in. I'll push that choke in until the engine starts to die a little bit, then back it out, and then I'll start my adjustment process on that screw. This one just has the one screw, and So that'll set that one. Now, the other thing you're going to be fighting on these, you can get these carburetors adjusted just right, but if you don't have the proper air filter or fuel filter on them, it's just not going to work for you. And you're going to have either a gravity feed system, so you're going to have a fuel tank sitting above your engine, and gravity is going to bring that fuel out of that fuel tank and into your carburetor. So what happens with that gravity one is this is the type a filter. It's actually called a particle screen. It's just a screen like it's in your kitchen faucet. That's the kind that you need for the gravity feed systems. If you use this type, where it's because that's about the size of them. They're in those. I don't have one right here. They're inside those little plastic cartridges, see-through plastic cartridges. You have a little paper filter in them. You you can get away with those sometimes, especially if they're really cheap ones. They're really thin paper. Some of that gravity feed fuel will get through those, but you still might fight the factory settings or your settings on your carburetor because you're having resistance. You're just not getting the proper amount of fuel, but you will on this kind. But if you have a pressure system, so you have a fuel pump run off your vacuum, that will push the fuel through there, and it's okay to use those cartridge filters on that type. I prefer the cartridge filters simply because it filters out more particles. Where there's two types. I think they still sell the yellow ones. They measure them by microns of what they're able to filter out, but they don't filter out the same things that these filter out. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really that simple, but it just takes time, and it can be really frustrating. So just be patient with it, and again, start with those factory settings. One or back that all the way in, turn that all the way in, and then back it out one full turn on your idle adjustment screw. And again, screw that one all the way in and back it out 1/4 turn and start your adjustment back and forth using the choke as well. Okay, I hope that helped you, and I wish you great luck, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much. Have a good day.